A giant mountain man rejected by his village meets a vampire queen who sees his true worth. Their forbidden union could unlock an ancient prophecy that would reshape the realm entirely. But what happens when the human world discovers that their monster has become something far more powerful than they could have ever imagined? Rorik ducked as he entered his family's small wooden house. His head almost touched the ceiling. At 7 feet tall, he was bigger than anyone else in Blackridge Village. His wide shoulders barely fit through doorways. "You're late again," his father said without looking up from his work. The old man's hands moved quickly as he cut a piece of wood. "The Smiths needed help with their barn," Rorik explained. He put a small bag of coins on the table. It was more money than most people made in 2 weeks. But his father just frowned. "Your brothers hunted all day. They got 3 deer. That's real work for real men," his father said. "Not just lifting things like some big ox." Rorik's younger brothers looked at each other and smiled. They were normal-sized and good hunters. They fit in with village life, but Rorik was always the odd one out. That night, while his family slept, Rorik sat alone by the dying fire. His huge hands worked on a small wooden box, carving tiny patterns into it. Even though his fingers were thick, they moved with grace. Village children would watch him on market days, amazed as he turned plain wood into beautiful animals and boxes with small details. But the village people thought such work was just a silly hobby, not real work. Early the next morning, as Rorik got water from the well, he heard the village elders talking in hushed voices. "We must send someone tonight," whispered Elder Maren, a thin woman with gray hair. "The mountain pass will be blocked by snow soon, and the Crimson Court won't wait." "But who? We've sent strong men before, and they never come back," another elder said sadly. Elder Maren looked at Rorik, standing by the well. "Maybe someone who won't be missed much." That evening, the elders came to Rorik's house looking serious. They told him about the Crimson Court, a place where vampires lived beyond the mountain pass. Every 7 years, each village had to send one worker there. In return, the vampires kept the villages safe from harsh winters and wild animals. "They like strong people," Elder Maren said, not looking Rorik in the eye. "You could serve them well." His family said nothing to stop the elders. His father just nodded, thinking about the payment they offered. The next day at dawn, Rorik stood at the edge of the village. He had a small bag with his things and his wood-carving tools. The mountain path stretched before him, with mist swirling around tall, sharp peaks. "I'll send money home," he told his mother, the only one who came to say goodbye. She put a small wooden charm in his hand. "This was your grandmother's? She was different too?" Then she walked away quickly so he wouldn't see her cry. Rorik walked for 3 days through the winding mountain path, following red stones that marked the way. On the 3rd night, as it got colder and snow began to fall, he saw a big black carriage pulled by 4 horses with glowing eyes. A pale woman stepped out, wearing black silk clothes. Her silver hair shone in the moonlight. "I am Duchess Isolde," she said in a voice like music. "You are smaller than what we usually get." Rorik was confused, then realized that vampires might be even bigger than him. "I know I'm too big to marry," Rorik said suddenly, remembering the village jokes. "But I can work, Your Grace." The Duchess smiled, showing the tips of sharp teeth. "We'll see what the Queen thinks of you." The Crimson Court was a city cut into the heart of the mountain. Big caves glowed with bright crystals that burned with inner fire. Tall, black stone towers reached up to dark, high ceilings. Vampires of all sizes walked through grand halls and across narrow bridges over dark rivers that flowed like ink. Rorik followed a guide through shiny black hallways to the servants' rooms. His room was bigger than his whole family home. The bed, made for tall vampires, actually fit him for once. "The queen will see you at midnight," a servant told him. "Rest until then." Queen Lilith was not what Rorik expected. Instead of a scary monster, he saw a royal woman with eyes like old stars, sitting on a throne made of crystal and bone. She stood as he came in, and he was surprised to see she was almost as tall as him, taller than any human woman he had ever met. "So you are the one from Blackridge," she said, walking around him in a circle. "They usually send us big dumb men with more muscle than brains." Rorik stood up straight. "I'm strong enough for any job, Your Majesty." "Yes, I see that," she said softly. "But what else can you do? Show me your hands." Confused, Rorik held out his huge hands. The queen took them in her cool palms, looking at the rough spots from years of hard work, but also the smooth fingertips of someone who makes things. "You create things," she said. It wasn't a question. That night began Rorik's new life in the Crimson Court. He worked for Lothair, an old vampire who took care of the court's treasures. Lothair saw Rorik's skill right away and had him fix small machines and make new cases for old objects. "You have the blood of the old ones in you," Lothair told him one night as Rorik finished a pretty clock case. "No normal human has such careful hands that are so big." "Old ones?" Rorik asked. "The giants who once ruled these mountains, before even vampires came," Lothair explained. "Their blood is thin in the villages now, but in you, it sings." Weeks passed, and the queen often called Rorik to her rooms to bring his work. Each time, she would talk with him about his work, his life in the village, and what he thought about the court. No one had ever cared about what he thought before, especially not a queen. On the longest night of winter, the Crimson Court had a big party. The great hall was filled with ice sculptures and frozen fountains with red wine. Rorik got fancy clothes and was invited as a guest, not a servant. "The queen asks for you," Duchess Isolde told him, bringing clothes that fit his big body, nicer clothes than he had ever worn. At the party, Queen Lilith took him away from the crowd to a balcony that looked over the underground lake. "Do you miss the sun, Rorik?" she asked, her pale fingers resting lightly on the stone rail. "Sometimes," he said. "But I've found beauty in the dark here that I never knew about." She smiled, a real smile that made her look almost soft. "I wasn't born a vampire. I was made one, chosen because I too was too big, too strange for my human village." Rorik felt like they shared something special. They both knew what it was like to be different. "There is an old story," she said, her voice very quiet, "that talks about giant blood and Night's Kiss joining to make a power that could keep our realm safe forever. For hundreds of years, I thought it was just a story. But when you came..." Her eyes met his. "The story tells of one who makes beauty from darkness, whose hands shape fate." Before Rorik could answer, shouts came from the great hall. They rushed back to find men from the mountain villages, hunters from beyond Blackridge, had broken into the court. "Kill the blood drinkers!" they yelled, holding silver weapons and burning torches. In the chaos, Rorik saw one hunter aim at the queen with a bow. Without thinking, he jumped in front, taking the silver arrow in his shoulder. As his blood spilled on the black floor, the crystals lighting the room flashed with blinding light, and every vampire in the room froze, staring at the red pool spreading from his wound. "Giant's blood," the queen whispered in wonder. The story is true. Rorik's wound healed very fast, leaving a silver mark that glowed in the court's crystal light. The queen herself took care of him, using old medicine while explaining what his blood meant. You come from the mountain giants who once ruled these peaks, she told him. Their blood gives you strength, long life, and the ability to mix with vampire blood. You could become something not human or vampire, but something new. This news changed everything. No longer just a servant, Rorik became very important to the vampire nobles. Some, like Duchess Isolde, welcomed him as the one from the old story. Others whispered that a half-human should never stand next to their queen. As spring came closer, people from Blackridge arrived, led by Elder Marin, and surprisingly, Rorik's father. We've come for our worker, his father said in the Queen's Hall. The deal was for 7 years of work, not for you to keep him forever. The deal, the Queen said coldly, was for payment. You sent him as payment, and payment was made. The other villages are getting angry, Elder Marin added. They say you've put a spell on him, that you plan to use his giant blood for bad magic. They're gathering fighters. Rorik stood quietly by the Queen's throne, torn between his old life and the place where, for the first time, being different was a good thing. That night, as he worked in his own workshop, now filled with tools made for his big hands, Lothair came in looking worried. The council meets tonight to decide what happens to you, the old vampire told him. Some fear what you and the Queen might become together. What do you mean? Rorik asked. Lothair sighed. The story speaks not just of protection, but of power. When giant's blood and vampire crown join, the mountains themselves will bend to their will. Some fear such power in one pair. Later, as Rorik walked the dark halls, he heard the Queen arguing with her helpers. The binding has not been done in 1,000 years, one old vampire hissed. And never with giant blood. It could kill you both, or worse, make you too powerful for anyone to control. I am your queen. Lilith's voice cracked like breaking ice. I need no one's control. Rorik stepped into the room, and the helpers went quiet. Tell me about this binding, he asked. The Queen sent her helpers away and took Rorik to her private library, where old scrolls showed the binding, a ritual that would put vampire power into a human while letting them keep their human nature, making a mixed being of great power. It needs sacrifice, she explained, her fingers touching the faded pictures. Blood freely given, life willingly shared. The pain is said to be very bad. And what would I become? Rorik asked. Not vampire or giant, but something new. Living forever, powerful, tied to me for all time. Her eyes met his. It is your choice, Rorik. I would not force you. Before he could answer, Duchess Isolde ran into the library. Your Majesty, the mountain villages have joined together. They march on the court with silver and fire, and... She stopped. Rorik's brothers lead them, saying we've made their family member a slave. That night, Rorik stood on the walls of the Crimson Court, watching torches wind up the mountain path like a snake of fire. Below him, vampire fighters got ready for battle, their old weapons shining in the crystal light. You could go back to them, the Queen said softly, appearing beside him. Tell them you came by choice. Maybe they would go away. And then what? Rorik asked. Go back to being strange? Too big to marry? Too different to belong? He turned to her. I've found my place here. With you. Even knowing what the binding would need? The pain you would feel? I've felt pain my whole life, Rorik said, taking her hand. But never for something I chose. A terrible scream echoed through the mountain pass. The vampire's first guards had met the villagers. The battle had begun. "There's no time to get ready properly," the queen said urgently. "If we do the binding now, it will be more dangerous." "Then we face the danger together," Rorik replied, his mind made up. Deep inside the heart of the mountain, in a room older than the Crimson Court itself, Queen Lilith got ready for the old ritual. A circle of black stone pillars surrounded a pool of water so still it looked solid. Crystal shapes grew from the ceiling, their light shining in the dark water. "Once we start, we can't stop," she warned as she mixed her blood with old potions in a cup carved from a single diamond. "The change will remake what you are." Outside, the sounds of fighting got closer. The village people, armed with weapons blessed by mountain priests and led by Rorik's brothers who knew the secret paths, were breaking through the outer guards. Rorik took off his shirt, showing the silver mark over his heart where the arrow had hit him. The queen touched the mark with her cool fingers. "This is where it begins," she said. "The silver in your blood has made you ready, even though it hurts you." "I'm ready," Rorik said, his voice steady even though his heart raced. The ritual began with Rorik stepping into the pool. The water burned like fire on his skin. The queen walked around the pool 7 times, saying words in a language older than humans. With each circle, the crystals flashed brighter, and Rorik's body shook with pain as his blood began to change. On the 7th circle, the queen entered the pool. The water turned red around her as she cut her wrists. She pressed her bleeding wrists to Rorik's lips. "Drink," she ordered. "Take my power into yourself." As Rorik drank, pictures filled his mind. Hundreds of years of the queen's memories, the weight of living forever, the loneliness of power. He saw her change centuries ago, felt her pain as his own. The room doors burst open. Rorik's father and brothers stood there with Elder Marin and a group of villagers. Their faces twisted in horror at what they saw. "Monster!" Elder Marin shouted, throwing a silver-tipped spear. The spear hit the queen in the back. She arched in pain but did not let go of Rorik. Her blood kept flowing into him, her power joining with his. "Stop this!" Rorik's father yelled, running forward only to be pushed back by an invisible wall created by the ritual. Rorik felt his body changing. His muscles got harder, his senses sharper. The queen's blood burned through him like liquid fire, reshaping him from inside. He screamed as his bones broke and reformed, longer and stronger than before. The queen, weakened by the silver weapon and the hard ritual, began to fall. Rorik caught her. Their blood mixed in the pool as the change reached its peak. "You must finish it," she gasped. "Take my crown. Become what you were meant to be." With shaking hands, Rorik took the crown of black diamonds from her head and put it on his own. A surge of power exploded from where the crown touched him, sending a wave through the room that knocked the villagers to their knees. The crystals overhead broke, raining light like falling stars. The mountain itself seemed to shake. Rocks fell from the ceiling as the very shape of the court changed. When the light faded and the dust settled, Rorik stood in the center of the pool, transformed. He had grown even taller. His skin was pale but flushed with new power. His eyes shone with an inner light that matched the crystals overhead. In his arms, he held the queen. Her wound was healing as their shared power flowed between them. "What have you become?" his father whispered in fear and wonder. Rorik stepped from the pool. His movements were smooth despite his huge body. When he spoke, His voice rang with new power. "I am what I was always meant to be," he said. "Not monster or man, but guardian of these mountains and all who live in them." The queen stirred in his arms, her strength coming back. Together they faced the villagers who stepped back in fear and wonder. "Go back to your homes," Rorik ordered. "Tell them the Crimson Court has new guardians now. No more workers needed. We ask only for respect and space." Elder Maren stepped forward, her old, bent form tiny before Rorik's changed body. "And if we say no?" Rorik raised one hand, and the mountain rumbled in answer. Cracks appeared in the room floor, making a perfect circle around the villagers, but not hurting them. "Then the mountains themselves will make you," he said simply. Months later, as summer warmed the lands below, a small group made its way up the mountain path to the Crimson Court. It carried no weapons, only gifts and trade goods. At the front rode Rorik's mother, her face lined with worry, but her eyes filled with hope. She was led to the grand throne room, now changed. Where once there was a single throne of bone and crystal, now 2 huge seats of black stone and diamond stood side by side. On them sat Queen Lilith and King Rorik, their hands joined, their matching crowns shining in the crystal light. "My son?" she whispered, hardly knowing the royal figure before her. Rorik stood and crossed the room in 3 giant steps. He knelt before his mother, bringing himself to her level, and took her small hands in his. "Still your son," he said gently, but also something more. She reached up to touch his face, paler now, with features more fine, but still her boy. "Are you happy here?" she asked, the only question that really mattered to her. Rorik looked back at the queen, his queen, who watched them with ancient eyes now soft with something like hope. "For the first time in my life," he said, "I am exactly where I belong."